For joining Social Responsibility Chicago for our monthly speaker series. This program is open to all and is made possible because of the support from our member organizations. We also hold other programs, including our upcoming session 2 of Demystifying Social Impact Career Series on Friday, February 25 at noon. If you were unable to join the first one, I encourage you to register for this one. Social responsibility leaders Raisa Correa of CNA, and a former colleague of mine, and Stephen Shaw of Verizon will share their career and the lessons they learned along the way. Moderated by our very own Michelle Mahoney of Leo Burnett, we're excited to help you connect and grow your network. Registration is free for Social Responsibility Chicago members and $25 for non-members. I hope to see you there. We have a really great program and speaker lineup for you today to help us unpack the impact of a more sustainable food future. So let's not waste any time and let's get to it. I'm going to turn it over to our moderator, David Manilow. He's a lifelong Chicagoan and has produced sports, travel, and food-related television programs for ABC, HBO, ESPN, CNBC, and PBS. David created the restaurant review program Check Please in Chicago and has since spun off local versions of the show in San Francisco, Seattle, Kansas City, Miami, Washington, DC, Phoenix, Philadelphia, and Vienna, Austria. David has conducted more than 1,000 interviews and also has a weekly food and drink podcast with Crane Chicago Business, with plans to expand it to an omni-channel brand in 2022 called The Dining Table. I'm really excited about our program today, so David, take it away.
Thanks so much, Brandon. In their last fiscal year, the Greater Chicago Food Depository distributed nearly 100 million free meals to those in the Chicago area, the most in their 42-year history. It shows what an amazing organization they are and the strong philanthropic nature of Chicagoans, but it also tells us that we have a lot of work to do to reduce and hopefully end hunger here. Today, we're going to address the recent past, the present, and discuss how we can move to a more sustainable food future. I'm David Manilow. I'm honored to moderate this event. As Brandon said, I'm a lifelong North Sider. I'm married to a South Sider, which makes the upcoming baseball season very interesting for our kids. I've also been lucky enough to be adjacent to the restaurant business in Chicago for the last 20 years through this TV show I created called Check Please, as well as my weekly podcast for Cranes, which actually one came out today on Bronzeville. My favorite meal is Thanksgiving dinner with all the trimmings. The question I get asked most by far is, what is my favorite restaurant? And speaking of questions, feel free to leave them in the chat and we'll try to include them in the program. You can ask specific questions related to the topic at hand or any questions for this very dynamic panel that we have. And this panel I'm going to introduce now, they each have a unique perspective. And I'm going to ask each one of them to introduce themselves. I'm going to start with Maurice Cousin. Maurice, there you go. Director of Food Access Capacity for the Greater Chicago Food Depository. Maurice, welcome.
Thank you, David. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Social Responsibility Chicago Forum. I am Maurice Cousin, Director of Food Access at the Chicago Food Depository, specializing in solutions rooted in diversity, equity, and inclusion principles. I bring more than 20 years of experience in minority community engagement and business development. I lead the team responsible for food allocations, relationship management, training, and capacity building resources for our depository network of over 400 traditional pantry, soup kitchens, and shelters across the county. Prior to joining the Food Depository, I served as president of the Polk Street Group, a Chicago-based minority-owned boutique consulting firm specializing in community development and relationship management. I earned my executive MBA from the University of Illinois in organizational leadership and change management. I have a bachelor's degree in business economics from Florida A&M University, go Rattlers, and a certification in project management from Loyola. I'm a proud father of two amazing young men, Michael, 18, graduating senior from Latin, and Maurice, the second, 13, at the University of Chicago Lab School. We are Southsiders in Hyde Park. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Maurice. Now, Sam Toya, President and CEO of the Illinois Restaurant Association. Hey, Sam.
Hey, thank you, David. And I want to thank Social Responsibility Chicago for having me today. Again, I'm Sam Toya, President and CEO of the Illinois Restaurant Association. We're a nonprofit trade association dedicated to promoting, protecting, educating, improving the restaurant and hospitality industry here in Illinois. We serve all facets of the industry: chef-driven restaurants, neighborhood spots, quick service, bars, breweries, caterers, iconic brands, food trucks, and everything in between. We also have a wide array of associate members that serve the industry. Throughout the pandemic, the IRAs were 24/7 to protect and support restaurants so they can survive now and thrive in the future. Restaurants are still really struggling right now as they face 23 months of debt, rising food costs, supply issues, limited staff, and lower customer demand in the bitter cold winter season. January is a bad month for restaurants, even not being in a pandemic. We know from our latest survey of Illinois restaurants, operators have really had a tough recently. 97% experienced a decline in customer demand for indoor on-premise dining in recent weeks. 92% say business conditions are worse now than they were 3 months ago. And 88% of the operators say their customer traffic 2021 was lower than it was in 2019. 77% say their sales values in 2021 was lower than it was in 2019. Now with the mask mandate and likely the vaccine passport mandate being lifted soon, those are encouraging signs. We're getting back to some normalcy. Restaurants continue to do their part to keep their diners and team members safe and eager to take the next step towards normalcy and recovery. When it comes to sustainability, it is an increasingly important issue for the restaurant industry. It is one of the most talked about topics among consumers and restaurant owners, operators. Both want to know how they can reduce their environmental footprint for various reasons, but most importantly, because it's energy and cost efficient and it's the right thing to do. I'm looking forward to our conversation this morning. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Now, Michael Fosnack, who holds down 2 jobs, CEO of World Business Chicago and CMO, City of Chicago. Michael.
Morning, everyone. I have to call out Sam Toya. We are so fortunate to have Sam as a civic leader in our city and the state. He knows every neighborhood. He knows probably every restaurant in the city. Whenever I have a question or need some counsel, I call Sam, and we are fortunate to have someone like Sam leading this important vertical in our city. Like David said, I have 2 jobs. I'm the CEO of World Business Chicago, which is the city's economic development arm. We do 3 things. We are helping existing companies in Chicago to stay and to thrive and to expand. Secondly, we are attracting new companies to Chicago. We're fortunate enough to have 73 companies moving to Chicago last year in a pandemic year, which was one of our highest numbers in a long, long time. And third, I'm promoting the city of Chicago as a great city to come to as a town, to build your career, to build your company, build your startup. And then there's a lot of overlap with my CMO role, where I'm part of the Mayor Lightfoot's team, and kind of re-promoting the city as well to tourism and as well to our residents to make sure, we need to have our population grow. Fortunately, the last 10 years, we grew by close to 2%, but we need more. We need to make sure that every resident in every 77 neighborhoods feels they have a future here, they feel safe, and they can thrive with their family. Looking forward to the conversation. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, let's get going. Maurice, let me start with you. The pandemic has been a long, rough, almost 2 years for just about everybody, but perhaps the hardest hit are those who are now or have been food insecure. Can you give some insight on how the pandemic has affected these 1 in 7 Chicagoans and the progress you see moving forward?
Yes, David. Let's level set. There was a hunger crisis in Chicago before the pandemic started in Black and Latino communities across the South and West sides. We must encourage an ingenuity to build a more just and equitable food system and ultimately society. No one should go hungry. Black and Latino families are disproportionately affected. From September 20 to 2021, 30% of Black households with children, 28% of Latinx households with children, and almost 17% of white households with children experience food insecurity. Feeding America projects that there are 600,000 people in Cook County that are living in food insecurity households in 2021, an increase of almost 27% from 490,000 in 2019. What does this mean for us and for you? In our last fiscal year, the Food Depository distributed more than 117 million pounds of food, the largest amount by far in our 42-year history. That's equivalent of 97 million meals and almost a 25% increase year over year. We need to change.
And when you talk about food insecurity, going hungry is different than food insecurity. Can you just describe the difference?
Food insecurity is the inability to understand where your next meal is coming from. Being hungry is missing a meal today. Food insecurity is the systemic issues that plague a lot of our people across the city, of systemic issues that don't allow them to make the decisions of whether we're going to pay rent, buy food, pay tuition, or any of the life lessons that anybody has on a day-to-day basis. We need to address a lot of those challenges across our communities so that we can allow people to have the dignity of being able to shop and live without making those life decisions.
I'm going to go to Sam because, obviously restaurants have had a very difficult time. Sam, you pointed that out. But they also, by nature, are a very philanthropic industry. How have they been able to take care of their own employees, their own businesses, and still try to give back to the community during the pandemic?
David, restaurant owners, operators are the ultimate supporters of the community and charitable causes. We know that restaurants are the soul of every neighborhood throughout our 77 neighborhoods here in the city of Chicago. You saw restaurants across the city, really across the country, provide meals to people in need throughout the height of COVID, for their employees, for folks that lost their jobs, for first responders, for anyone that needed a meal. Restaurateurs, like I said, are type A personalities. They always want to give back. Restaurants often partner with different charitable causes and engage their customers with those causes as well. Like they'll say X amount of percentage will go towards, this charitable cause. So they're always reaching out because, like I said, they're part of the neighborhood. Restaurants are places that local groups can gather, and they have always donated their space and time to help out. Helping out people in need is just ingrained. It's in the DNA of restaurant owners, operators, as you well know. So they also find ways to support the community any way they can, because that's just the way restaurant owners, operators are. People come into restaurants for food, but they come back for the service. And part of the service is being part of the community and supporting the community in any way they can.
Right. In my experience for the last 20 years, I've just been amazed at how much restaurateurs step up. It doesn't matter what the cause is. They just step up. They'll throw up a fundraiser. They'll be there for the community. They'll be there for, even if there was a natural disaster in another state or another, they'll just be there, which has been great.
Yes. I mean, look what we did when the hurricane was in New Orleans. We stepped up, here in Chicago. That's what we do. That's what, like I said, restaurant owners, operators, not just here in Chicago, but throughout the country, they step up. They care about their community, or they wouldn't be good restaurant operators.
That's right. They take care of people. So I'm going to go to Michael for a second. So Mayor Lightfoot's Invest Southwest is one of the cornerstones of her administration. And I'm particularly struck about one of them, Englewood Connect, which is in Greater Englewood. It's a $10 million eco-food hub that is going to adapt a fire station into commercial kitchen. There'll be year-round farming, culinary-related uses that empower, employ, and feed local residents. Can you talk a little bit about Invest Southwest and other private-public partnerships that the city is undertaking in this area?
Sure. And allow me first to maybe take a step back and look at what we call the whole food and ag ecosystem. You really have three key components. Let's say food production, which you always think about farming, but it's really food production nowadays. Second is kind of the food branding and products, which you might buy from a farmer, but then you build your own product and you sell it. And the third is distribution. Distribution is the retail network, it's restaurants. Sometimes they are very connected, and sometimes you have different players in each of these sectors. What we did in Englewood, we're bringing this ecosystem together on one location because it is about farming, it is about production. How can we, in an environmentally friendly way, produce food? How do we brand as well? How to build startup culture where companies, Chicago residents can build their own food firms, and then distribution. How can we connect? We lost a lot of food startups on the south and west side. They don't have the distribution power yet. So we are helping them as well. How can you get into a Mariano's? How can you get in a restaurant? So these three things, like Englewood is an example for this, but we are very conscious with overall this whole food ecosystem, but then in West Southwest, because we know that traditionally we have for decades neglected and disenfranchised and underinvested in the south and west side. And now with Invest Southwest, we picked really 12 corridors to build a much more holistic investment approach. And because we see if you look at I'm very closely involved with the startup systems and ecosystem here, there's amazing entrepreneurs on the south and west side. This is not just charity. This is not just the right thing to do. We have to unlock the amazing talent the entrepreneurial power, the creativity we have on the South and West Side. And that's what we're trying to do. And I think, David, in the pre-talk, we talked about like 4 years ago, we had 85 food and ad companies headquarters in Chicago. Now we're over 400. And in a more diverse way, we have the most Black and brown entrepreneurs in the food and ag sector than any other city in the country. And that's intentional. And I think that's why I look at the whole thing. And I think Sam, what he does on the restaurant, that is amazing, because they are all connected. Where the food comes from, what is the food branded, and how do we experience in a restaurant. And the Greater True Food Depository is so important word, because so far, and we are working hard on this, the food retailers have not stepped up enough yet to address the food deserts. I was just yesterday on a call with a big retailer. We challenged them. You cannot just open up stores on the north side. This has to be an economic recovery. You have to look on the south and west side. It's the right thing to do, and there is business to be made.
Right. But there are food deserts on the south and west side. So what are we doing about it?
Yeah, no, two things, like in West Southwest, it's like these 12 corridors where we're making sure that some of the tenants are food retailers. And we're talking with retailers right now, very active. We are pitching them. So within Wellbeing Chicago, I have a business development team who's only focusing on the south and west side. Because I think in the past, companies like let's say Amazon, they don't understand the south and west side. And we have to sell and promote these neighborhoods much more aggressively to say they're a business opportunity, and dear large global retailer, we will not help you as much on the north side if you as well don't open up stores on the south and west side.
Right. And it's also the limited access to healthy food, which is really a problem. I want to talk to Maurice about that. Is the GCFD, do they have food trucks? Are they providing healthy vegetables? Tell us how you're helping some of these food deserts.
David, we have over 700 partners and programs across the county, each of them operating daily to provide the freshest, healthiest product possible to our neighbors and clients. Even though a lot of people believe that food trucks are the answer, that is not the long-term sustainable solution to food insecurity and hunger. We need to invest in our communities and provide the opportunities for our partners that can provide the healthiest and best product. We have over 400 pantries that provide frozen proteins, fresh produce, canned goods that are all healthy for our clients.
Gotcha. You know, when we put this topic out, a lot of questions came about the supply chain. And so, Sam, there's been incredible supply chain disruptions. Have you seen an increased dependence on and demand for local produce, meat, dairy, et cetera? And does this make our supply chain, our local supply, does this make our local supply more essential?
Yes, you know, first of all, customers today are better informed about the environmental issues and protecting our resources, right? The younger customers, they're definitely more educated. They look at the world from a different view. So yes, locally grown products are very, very important. Because like I said, because the younger customer is much more educated about how and where they want to spend their money and determine where they want to buy goods and service from restaurants and other merchants who think, you know, they're doing the right thing, right? They grew up with Top Chef. They grew up with, Master Chef, the Food Channel, Check Please and stuff like that. They're much more well-educated, and they really do want to focus on sustainability and social responsibility, 100%. And you were the pioneer of that, David.
And if you allow me to jump in here, David, I mean,
Sure.
One prime example is Nature's Fine, by one of the hottest food startups in the country right now, who is on the south side in an old meat packing district, who builds a fungus-based protein replacement. They just expanded again, and I think it's close by to the city, and I think will be one of the most interesting brands to look out for the next couple of years. But that's creating products locally, but also the most 95% less water, 99% less electricity consumption. That is the future, I believe.
I agree with you. Maurice?
David, we also launched a pilot program targeting Black and brown farmers here in urban ag here in the city of Chicago. We launched it last year with Growing Home, one of our partners, and then they were allowed to provide additional fresh produce to a partner in the Inglewood community. We're looking to expand that program because we know that supporting Black and brown farmers in urban ag in our communities is the best way to provide investment as well as provide the healthiest product and not put strain on the supply chain because it's local and it's easy to get to. So we're in support of all local development in ag.
And have the community gardens thrived during the pandemic? Are there more?
I can't speak to community gardens, but I know that we are looking at urban ag as an opportunity. The yields of a community garden won't necessarily be able to provide the weekly produce to a pantry that's serving 100, 200, 300 families at every distribution. But what we are looking at are those urban ag farms and those farmers from downstate that are local that can provide that sustainable product to our pantries and partners so that they can continuously get product on a weekly and daily basis.
Great. Let's talk a little bit about volunteering and coalition building, which I think is really an important topic for a lot of the people who are viewing today. Michael, we live in an amazing city. It's filled with talented people, innovative companies, as you mentioned. You interact with a lot of CEOs. I'm sure you want them to be great corporate citizens. What are you hearing from CEOs in regards to food security and food justice, and how can they activate volunteers within their organizations, even if their focus isn't within the food system?
It's a good question. I think most CEOs are aware of it and they want to help. I think there are two things. One is we have to make it easier for them to help and not just writing a check. We love when they write checks, but ultimately we want that their business, their core business, is making a change to address these issues. And I think right now the old way of kind of leadership and CEOs are like, oh, let me write you a big check and I show him great. You are not a great corporate citizen in 2022 by just writing a check. You have to look at business practices. You have to look at your own supply chain, where you're buying, who you're working with, who you're partnering with. And I think the CEOs are waking up. They want to change. They want to make an impact, but sometimes we make it very difficult for them. So part of my job is like, okay, here is an easy thing you can change to make sure you're not just writing a big check, you're changing your business practices. And this is, I think, for all the civic partners here, we have to help these companies because they want to, sometimes they just don't know how to.
Right, and at some point we have to make it a little bit more of a priority. And I think, especially with crime being what it is in the last year or two, that kind of can take focus, rightly so. But getting CEOs and getting corporations to kind of like motivate and activate on the issue of food insecurity is really, I think, important.
Yeah, and I think the corporations, the leaders have seen over the last couple of years, not doing anything is not coming well at the price. I mean, this is not a coincidence, like Maurice said, like the food insecure in the South and West side is also where COVID impact was the hardest, the most victims of violence. So this is convoluted, the health, as you, I don't know if all the listeners know, I mean, the life expectancy gap between the best and the worst zip code in Chicago is 9 years, which is just shocking. It is unacceptable today. So I think corporations should wake up, but we have to push them and we have to help them of how they change their core business practices, not just doing philanthropic work.
Right. And Maurice, what do you think the best strategies are for coalition building in Chicago to help this issue?
I think anytime you can bring thought leaders together is better for everyone. You cannot charity your way out of this work. We have to work together. We have to invest. We have to provide those opportunities within the communities that have been historically underserved to make a difference. As Michael said, we love donations. GCFD, our entire platform is based upon the generosity of our donors. But we also need your time. We need your effort. We have volunteer opportunities at GCFD, but we're also launching a platform coming up in the coming months that will allow organizations and individuals to not only volunteer at GCFD, but at our partners, because we know that investing in our partners and investing in the communities and providing those thought leaders out in the communities, as well as at GCFD, will create a more sustainable food system.
Right. And, Sam, you're at the heart of like the food industry in Chicago, really. I mean, restaurants are lifeblood. People come to Chicago. It's, food tourism is huge, and I hope it will be again once we get this behind us. It would be great if we could figure out a way where we could get the restaurant industry, the business community, Greater Chicago Food Depository to figure out some way to just build a coalition and make it. I'm surprised there isn't like even a media campaign on a WBZ or something that just makes it so people really put this issue to the forefront.
Absolutely. Obviously, we've been in this pandemic for the last 23 months. Hopefully we get to an endemic pretty soon. But restaurant owners, operators are always thinking how they can cut their costs, be more efficient, increase their profit margins, shrink, So they're always thinking, and they want to do better. Sustainability, very, very important. So I think as we come out of this pandemic, we're going to see more and more of this. I think people are going to be more, more in tune to what's going on. I think the mayor's leading, is leading on this, especially the South and, Southwest Side Project. And I know that restaurant owners want to be, they want to be at the table. They want to figure it out. One for, for the restaurant, but also for the environment. So I think we need to have more of these discussions, and communication is the key to success. So I think we need to keep having more of this as we move ahead and get more restaurant owners, operators involved, but vendors involved as well. The US Foods, the Cisco's, the Gordon Food Services. We need to get them involved, also working with our locally grown products as well, so they could, work with them and get their products out there.
Right,
So
because
it's on all levels.
It's not as simple as just, restaurants have excess food at the end of the night. How do we get it from the restaurants to the people in need?
Exactly. You know what I mean? They're always thinking of how, when they have leftover food at the end of the night, how could they get that out to, to people that need the food, right? Obviously, improved technology has been very important. Social media, that has changed how we do business, as we all know. Social media can greatly help you reach and win over customers and smart operators, embracing these, embracing this as we move forward. So I think we got to bring technology into this as well.
David, before we change, I'd love to, I don't want people to think that these coalitions are not happening. The Food Depository is right now working on the Food Equity Council that the mayor just launched last week. This is a public-private partnership that's working on getting healthy, community-focused food to communities on a daily basis. This is an opportunity that everyone's coming to the table and bringing and aggregating the thought leadership to address these very issues that we're talking about. So these collaborations are happening. It's just we need more of them.
Exactly. We need more. Exactly. In all 77 communities. It might be happening, Maurice, but we got to get it from the north side to the south side to the west side, all over the city, 100%. And I know Michael, the mayor, they're all behind that. So I think we all got to work together to do that. But you're right. It's going on. But I think people like you and I want it to go on a bigger stage, more neighborhood.
And I think what a lot of our listeners, viewers might not know is Chicago leads the nation in food manufacturing. We're the biggest in the nation. So I have a question for Michael. How important is the food and ag sector in Chicago for its economic growth? And also, you have some exciting news. Tell us about the recent announcement about the Future of Food Summit, which is coming in May.
And like I said before, we focused 2 years ago, we made a decision that food and ag is one of 4 industry sectors, because we saw the employment numbers, we saw the future, where we have an advantage here in Chicago. We really are becoming the de facto food innovation capital of the world. A lot of the food innovations are happening here because we have great college and university systems. We have big CPG companies like Quaker Oats, Mondelez, Kraft, and then we have a thriving startup system. And we have a lot of venture capital and private equity money fueling that ecosystem. So it's a tremendously important one, especially like Maurice said, we think on the production, the branding, and the distribution, it is about equity. So you have a huge opportunity. We see a lot of Black and brown entrepreneurs moving into the space that we want to support and highlight. So that's why when we have always done a venture summit, we're bringing kind of capital entrepreneurs together. It's the first time we're doing a food-centric venture summit in end of May. We are bringing probably 150 startups together. Majority of them are female, Black and brown owned startups. We're bringing big corporations in who want to look at innovations and capital. So the startups can really get enough funding. We probably have at least 500 people participating with a lot of great feedback from all over the country. You're the only city who really does that aggressively. Because I think it's a huge opportunity because food, Alice Waters always said is food is politics. Food is politics. And food determines how we behave, how we get together, how we gather as a community, as a family. I think that's why we all have such a big passion for restaurants, because it is the focal point where all the great things, can happen. So for us, a super, super important sector.
And it could lead, and I know you're, of course, you're the leader in driving economic growth in the city, but it could lead to Chicago becoming like the food innovation capital of the country.
Yes, and we also planning now to have initial thoughts about how can we do because like you said, food, restaurant tourism is the one. Why can't we have like a more food ecosystem tourism tour so people can go on the south side and see what are we doing on farming. The west side, we're doing some innovative things. On the north side, I think we have, Sam Toyer always, whenever he goes to me, he always tells, talk about restaurants and food. People love it. And we have a huge advantage here. We just have to do it in a much more equitable way. Like one of the things I probably will try to do at the end of the year, a lot of the corporations have their big gatherings and go to big restaurants. They mostly do it on the north side. We need to highlight some amazing restaurants on the southwest side so that people and companies can spend some of their holiday monies in some of the locations that traditionally they have not invested in.
Right. And so, there's a kind of trend towards the good for you food space and good for you food companies. And I have a question for Maurice. So are you offering more plant-based diet? And are those you serve asking for that?
We are always looking to expand our product menu. Just this past year, we added additional fresh and local produce that we had never offered before. We are moving away from pounds served being the metric of how we provide success or how we measure success. We are really truly looking at community focus, client experience, and those opportunities that can give our residents and neighbors the dignified experience that they need. Wow. We haven't ventured completely into plant-based. We are absolutely focused on more healthy, more fresh, more local to provide the healthiest product possible.
Right. And for those in food deserts, though, that might not be a part of their history. Do you find a resistance to that, or how do you how's that gateway go in there?
It's all about education. We have to not only provide the product, but we have to provide the training on how to prepare it, how to store it, how to clean it, how to wash it. Everything is involved in educating a constituency that may have never had something before. But that doesn't mean you don't do it. You have to provide it. It's what's best. It's what's healthy. It is what creates sustainable communities.
What I've noticed is that there's actually a lot of Black-owned vegan restaurants on the South Side sprouting up, which is new. There used to be years ago, actually, when I started Check Foods, we did Soul Vegetarian East, which was like a great restaurant on the South Side. But now you see a lot of, and I'm wondering if that's just kind of like that's trying to combat, poor diets, or that's how that came about.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I think African Americans are always at the forefront of food innovation. We have provided new opportunities culturally throughout history. And so, we have a historical nature of unhealthy foods because of food deserts or just products within our reach. Everyone needs a healthier diet. We all need more plant-based, more plant protein in our diets to live longer and healthier. But that's gonna help us in the healthcare. That's gonna help us in life. It is beneficial to everyone. And so I think Blacks and Browns are always going to be at the forefront because we are the ones who are driving innovation across the city and the country.
And Sam, I'm assuming you're seeing more plant-based restaurants opening up, and then without question, more plant-based offerings than just traditional non-vegan restaurants.
Absolutely, David. Some of the top trends for 2022 from the National Restaurant Association is what's hot culinary forecast include plant-based sandwiches and burgers, plant-based breakfast meats, and zero waste sustainability. Plant-based proteins check a lot of boxes, right? They can be more affordable too, and they offer more sustainability and are appealing to a growing segment of diners. As I say to millennials, they grew up with the Food Channel. They understand this. So the consumer demand for plant-based protein has increased unbelievable for people going to restaurants, and restaurant owners have taken notice and adjusted their offerings accordingly. No question about that.
Right. And also, I think the younger generation wants to know where their food is coming from. Not
Exactly. They don't want to be shotting up with all this antibiotics and stuff, right? That's what they don't want.
I just want to call out, the former CEO of McDonald's, Don Thompson, is one of the key lead investor and incubator for that. One of our amazing, African-American business leaders. And sometimes we don't talk enough about the people who also make these things happen from a capital and innovative perspective. So we have some great Black and brown business leaders who are thriving in that space. Right.
And you guys have great incubators like the Hatchery and all kinds of things.
Great, yeah.
Explain
the one thing we're looking right now is, we don't have a real restaurant row on the south side and the west side. So we're looking maybe can we do something in a coalition? Because we also want to drive more tourism in the south and west side. So because we don't have enough, we have pre-pandemic, we have 57 million tourists coming. We don't have enough coming to the neighborhoods on the southwest side. So we have to focus more on that and build these attractions.
Right. I was saying before that my podcast today is on Brownsville. And part of I'm interviewing the owners of the new Brownsville winery, which is interesting, which was actually part of the Invest Southwest, which is interesting. And it's a winery. And they're doing it, one, because Brownsville's real estate is going up, but they have no restaurant row. There's nothing really been new there. So they're doing that to serve their community, obviously. But it's also a way for people who live in Hyde Park or South Loop or Lincoln Park or whatever to go to Brownsville to see what's going on.
Yeah, this is a great project. I'm glad you went there. Like I said, we helped it with some city funds, but this is a great leadership team there, entrepreneurial team. And anyone who listens to it, please go, spend some money, invest, show your love.
That's right. It's Eric Williams from the Silver Room, who's had great successes for years in Hyde Park. Sam, I have a question for you. The National Restaurant Association projects some 90,000 locations have shuttered in the last 2 years nationally. Some temporarily and some for good. Chicago, as we all know, is an amazing restaurant city. We're a very social city. The pandemic caused a shift in dining out. The restaurants had to pivot. Do you think moving forward, diners will visit restaurants less frequently, or will pent-up demand cause a resurgence?
I think it will cause a resurgence. And what restaurant owners, operators are doing now, David, and you're probably well aware of this, they're thinking outside the box as they reconfigure or remodel or open new restaurants, right? They're going to have a pickup area where you just don't walk into the front of the restaurant, you walk into a certain area. So you feel more safe going in. There's not a lot of people there to pick up food. More and more restaurant owners, operators are going to, maybe it was about 10% or 15% of business, delivery business. I think you're going to see more like 20, 25%. More and more food. It's like restaurant on wheels. Back in the day, it was just like pizza places and Chinese places, that did the delivery. But now everyone does food delivery with our third party delivery. We got to work on that so the third party delivery doesn't take all the profits from the neighborhood restaurants in Brighton Park or Lincoln Square. And Michael and the mayor's team has been very helpful on that. But yes, as we move forward, I think that more restaurant owners, operators are going to develop pickup areas and develop, because you got to have a line kitchen set up for delivery, right? You got to have a bagger, you got to have, pass-through lines and stuff, a little bit different than you have a kitchen line for a dining room. So I think you will be seeing more and more carry out and pick up as we move forward. What we really need to do to save our independent restaurants throughout the country is to get the RRF replenished, Restaurant Revitalization Fund. The first round was $28.6 billion. We need another, probably $40 billion put into that to help the independent restaurants because only 1/3 of the restaurants applied for the RRF grant, got it. 2/3 didn't. We are a very independent restaurant town, David, Michael, Maurice, as you all know. We're not a chain restaurant town like Tampa or Houston. So it's very important we get RRF replenished. and we're working on that with Senator Duckworth, Senator Durbin, Mayor Lightfoot has been very helpful, supported as well as that. So I think to answer your question, the original question is yes, I think we will, come out of this and be better. As I always say, we are the culinary capital of the United States, and we will stay the culinary capital. New York might dispute that, and San Francisco's that big, so we are the culinary capital.
Although
build on one thought, like I think the outdoor dining permits that you experiment with the COVID are now permanent, and not just on the north side, all over the city. I think that's a big attraction for restaurants that increase their capacity, and we're reclaiming the streets. And I'm very excited about whenever I go out, in the weather's warmer and sit outside a restaurant. And I think that's a big driver, and we need to do more of that.
Yep, Michael, and what the mayor's doing with more and more development density, that's very important, because when restaurants go into a neighborhood, they want to make sure they have weekday business. You know what I mean? That's why you see so many restaurants between Cermak, North Avenue, Ashland, and the Lake, because they're getting all their tourists, all the convention business. So as Michael said earlier, we need to push out the tourists to the neighborhoods to help these restaurants that are going to open in the south side or the west side, having weekday business as well. So the density, the development is also important, because, neighborhoods don't thrive without businesses. Businesses need density. So with all that said, it all goes hand in hand.
What we're really talking about is investment. Because if we push this investment out to the communities,
south and west side. Exactly.
We're creating jobs. We're fighting food insecurity. The more jobs we have in communities where people live and work, the better the community is, as well as we're fighting to end hunger. Because then people aren't making those decisions about whether they're paying their rent or buying food, or whether they're visiting one of our food pantries across the county, because they're putting back into the community. That's why, as Michael said and as Sam said, we need to push this investment out into the communities to support all of the communities across the city and county.
That's right. But I'm guessing if, when convention business comes back, and booms, and McCormick Place is busy, I'm guessing those people who are going to the convention in McCormick Place are not going and dining on the south side normally. Maybe they're going to Virtue and Hyde Park, but they're going to the Boca places. They're going to the one-off places. So how do we as a city, and Michael, you can address this, get people to kind of change their mindset a little bit? Obviously, we have to have the places for them to want to visit, but how do we redirect?
I mean, the first time, so Choose Chicago has the first time now head of neighborhood tourism. And like Rob Foychuk was a great guy. So we really focusing on as well, how can we, like I said, taking the convention traffic and making sure all the city, all 77 neighborhoods can take a profit of that. So we are having campaigns on that, communicating this. We have to tell better stories of our neighborhoods. I think that's one of my focuses as a marketer. I think we are under-marketing the great neighborhoods in South and West Side. And then the image of violence and it's just always so overbearing. And the media is sometimes fueling this. And that's why, David, I'm always out talking with Cranes, talking with Franz Spielman to combat that image, because they're great restaurants, they're great people, great talent, and we have to do it on a broader scale.
That's right. But in some ways it's subconscious, right? So I was out when I was doing this research for the Bronzeville restaurants. I'm on King Drive, I'm in Cottage Grove. The boulevards are lovely, right? But sometimes when you hear about Cottage Grove, especially in the past, you don't hear great things.
So, but we did a research with Chicago residents. So how many neighborhoods do they think they know? And they're like, out of 70, probably 50. And you ask, how many have you visited the last 12 months? On average is 20. So most Chicago residents spending only 20 of their life in 20% of Chicago. I mean, they tell me, I know Chicago well. Sam Toya knows Chicago well because he goes to all neighborhoods. But most Chicago residents don't, both on the north and the south and west side. Because south and west side don't go to the north side not. We have to change the dynamic. So one of my goals as a CMO is, if I can just persuade every resident to experience one neighborhood more every year than usual, that drives change.
Well, I totally agree. So when I started Check Please, part of my goal was diversity, and so I would never have 2 restaurants out of the 3 in the same neighborhood. But part of what ended up happening was it expanded people's comfort zones, because we gave people a reason to go. We might do a place in Humboldt Park, or we might do a place in Hyde Park or Palos Park, and they're going there because now they we've articulated expectations for them for the reason to go. So it kind of, so I'm not so sure. I think we need to do more of that. And I'm like, my brain kind of is in the media, to allow the media to get things where people can really say, oh, I need to go there. It could be a garden, it could be a restaurant, it could be anything, but we need to get people to expand their comfort zones. Real quick, when I remember starting the show, I asked somebody just like, oh, I got this idea for a show. Hey, tell me your 3 favorite restaurants. And they told me, I'm like, I can tell you exactly where you live. Exactly where you live, right? Because that's your comfort zone. So we need to do something to expand people's comfort zone, which then will, be an economic driver for these areas that don't have much going on.
Well said, David. I think your work, like you said, is important. Shows like yours are very important to educate Chicago residents that they should go out of their comfort zone, and we need more.
Absolutely. So, Maurice, we talked a little bit about the problems we're having and the amount of food insecurity there is. What do you see moving forward? Let's assume the pandemic turns into an endemic. Let's assume that things get better. How do you see progress being made?
As numbers get better, let's really understand that they're not going to get better at the same rate for everyone. There's going to be a slower progression for those communities on the south and west sides. Historically, Black and brown communities never bounce back the same way that the white communities or the north side communities do, just because of previous disinvestment. So this will be a long-term sustainable opportunity for us to invest. What I will always say is ChicagoFoodBank.org, donate, volunteer. We need all the support. During the pandemic, thanks to our wonderful donors, we were able to provide food for free to all of our partners across the network. We'd love for that to continue for the upcoming year, our fiscal year. And so it depends on us to make sure that this happens. That frees up capital, that frees up opportunities for our partners to do things in unique ways to support the communities and the clients in their communities. ChicagoFoodBank.org, volunteer and donate.
Right. And one of the things we haven't talked about really is kids. If kids grow up food insecure, if kids grow up hungry, not only is it obviously terrible for nutrition, it's terrible for their state of mind. It leads to very bad things. School system takes care of a certain amount. In the summer, you have some programs in that. And I don't know who wants to take this question, Michael, Sam, Maurice. But how do we really address that? Because that's where it all starts. Maurice?
No, I agree with you. I mean, food is part of the CPS system as well, not just food providing, but also food education. And I know there are quite a few amazing volunteer organizations who are doing food education and how can you cook and learn this, because you're right. We need to start earlier. And Michelle Obama, when she first lady, she did a big focus nationally on food education, which I think is right. And I think we lost a little bit on that on the national level. So we probably have to step in more.
As I mentioned before, a lot of our communities are hardest hit are young. And so, we have healthy student markets in our programming where we have food pantries in schools all the way through colleges, because we know that if kids are getting food in school, they're typically bringing it home to their families to support them. Like we know that these are issues that are plaguing entire generations. And so we need to combat it on various levels. So we have pantries, we have healthy student markets, and we also have programming that allows for you to receive services as you need them, where you need them.
Great. We're about to wrap things up here, and we've had a lot of questions come in the chat. A lot of them are just kind of saying organizations that are throughout the country that people might want to look into that address some of the issues that we're talking about. But as we wrap up, I think maybe I could ask each of you to give us a little bit in your area of a prediction of where we're heading in Chicago. I'm a half glass full person. I think we're gonna, we're gonna have great times, because I do think that Chicagoans by nature are social beings. They want to be out. They want to help. And as soon as this weight is lifted from us, I think there's going to be, it's going to be great spring and summer. Although I do think sometimes that the weather today is a metaphor for the pandemic. It's beautiful today, or at least it's 50. And then we're like, oh, spring is here. And then in 2 days, it's going to be 20 and there's going to be 10 inches of snow. And we're going to be like, just like the pandemic, we thought it was over, but it comes back. So Sam, give me a quick kind of guess on the future, and then I'll go to Michael and then Maurice.
All right. So to talk about the weather, if you don't like the weather in Chicago, just stick around a few days to change. But I really do believe that, as I said a few minutes ago, Chicago is the culinary capital of the United States, and we will stay the culinary capital. We have a great partner on the 5th floor. She wants to make sure that we, keep putting guests in beds and diners and seats. I think as we move forward here, yes, the pandemic has been rough on everyone in the last 23 months. I think people just want to get out, enjoy our great city. We are the best city in America from May to September. I'll put us up against any city in the world, not just the United States. When we have the weather, if we had LA weather, we have 250 million people living here. We are a very friendly city. We, like I said, we have a great culinary scene. We have museums, we have sports teams. I think we're going to bounce back even stronger. It's going to be like the mayor said before, right? Coming out of the great fire, coming out of the great pandemic, Chicago is going to lead the charge as we come out of this pandemic to an endemic. Yeah.
Michael?
I think I'm very optimistic about the future of Chicago, really for 3 reasons. One, if you look at the business fundamentals, they're very strong. Business fundamentals, the diversity of economy, our college system, the town, the space we have. So I think the business fundamentals, and that's why we had so many new companies coming to Chicago and there's so much venture capital moving in. Second, I've never seen in the business leadership as much desire and willingness to change, to really understand the systemic racism, economic inequality in our city. That is a result. That is not what happens. It's a result of decades-long neglect. And I think the 99% of business leaders want to make a change and help. And third, I think the diversity of our city, of our neighborhoods, of our people, of our food is our key competitive advantage as a city. We have 30% Caucasian, 30% African Americans, 30% Latinx, and 10% Native American, Asian Americans. When we're using our good and our power, we can be a role model for the world of how to build a modern center and city that is as diverse as we love our life to be.
Maurice?
I agree with Sam and Michael. I am optimistic about where we are headed as a city. I think philanthropy is up. I think innovations are up. And I know partnerships are happening. We have launched a pilot program with a mutual aid consortium. We're looking at expanding our opportunities with local growers, and we are supporting our communities in unique and different ways. Thanks to the donors. Once again, I must thank our donors. Donations were up 600% around the country. We felt that at the Food Depository. People are getting involved. People are donating. People are contributing. And I think that is what this pandemic has taught us, that it's going to take all of us to get out of it.
Great. Well, I think we're all very hopeful, but I do think that we have a lot of work to do in this area, clearly. And I think we're going to toss it back to Brandon in a second. I want to thank our guest, Sam Toya from the Illinois Restaurant Association, Michael Fosnock with his dual role business, Maurice Cousin from Greater Chicago Food Depository. You guys were really informative, enlightening, and I really appreciate you being here, and I appreciate the opportunity, Brandon. Thanks so much.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, David. We really appreciate all four of you taking the time out of your busy schedules, being with us and talking about this important topic that is affecting our community. And there's so much work that we can do around this. And I think we all just heard that so clearly and well articulated from each of you. So thank you again for being with us. We're delighted to have such top-notch speakers. So thank you to all four of you. Thank you all for tuning in today and listening to our Social Responsibility Chicago Breakfast Program series. We'll see you all soon. Thanks so much.
Take care.